if you're a young man who's trying to improve in every area of your life, so physically, mentally, intellectually, and so on, then you need to love sleep. You need to love what sleep does to your body, to your mind, what it does to your personality even. So, not too long ago, I was working out in the gym, and I had my AirPods on. I was listening to an episode from the Joe Rogan podcast with Matthew Walker. And Matthew Walker, he is a sleep scientist. You've probably seen some of his shorts online, or shorts of him online on YouTube, let's say. And he talks about the giant effects that sleep have on your body. And he was very knowledgeable. He could basically, to every question that Joe Rogan asked him, he could answer with statistics and perfectly, concisely. And it was just incredible to hear someone that knowledgeable. But one thing stuck with me, and it was that when you're sleep deprived, although maybe to a lesser degree, you're basically experiencing the same thing as if you're intoxicated, if you're drunk. And the way he meant this was, when you're drunk, you don't think that you're drunk. If you're drunk and someone messes with you, or talks to your girl, or insults you in some way, then you're more likely to attack him or to threaten him, because alcohol is the only drug, I think, that makes you aggressive. All other drugs, they make you more lazy and they make you feel good, but they don't make you aggressive in that way. But so when you walk up to this guy in a club when you're drunk, you think that you can take this guy on. You think that you're a great fighter. But if someone were to record you doing that, walking up to him and swinging those punches, we would see that you're just a drunk guy and you can't really fight. You're just angry. And it was the same thing with sleep deprivation, he said. That when you're sleep deprived, you don't know that you're sleep deprived. You don't think about it. You think, oh, I'm fine. But once you get more sleep, then you start to realize, oh, I feel so good, I wonder why. And then you don't even think that, yeah, maybe it's because I slept more. And I've actually found this to be true, that when I'm sleep deprived, and it can even be that I'm laying in bed for 8 hours plus, but I'm constantly waking up, I need to take piss breaks, I can't sleep because there was some guy who beat the shit out of me in the sparring, and I have to think about all the, the sparring, I replay sort of the boxing sparring sessions in my head. Or there was this guy who did something passively aggressive, or just something that happened, and for some reason I can't sleep. And then, next thing you know, I get less than 7 hours of sleep, and it's even divided into, because I wake up at times at night, so it's even divided, which is the worst thing. You shouldn't wake up in the middle of a so-called circadian cycle, which is something that Matthew expressed and explained on this podcast. And so, yeah, then I didn't think that it would have any negative effects. I just got up and went on with my day. And then maybe later in the day I was trying to do something and I would just have this massive brain fog. I just couldn't focus. And not one time did I think that maybe it's because I didn't sleep too much. I didn't sleep enough. But later I realized that was probably the case. And also recently, I've been getting sick maybe 2 or 3 times just these past 3 months. And it's a big nerve. So a nerve is basically something bad that happens to you, or like if you have a video game character and the character is too good and you nerf it, meaning that you lower the stats so it gets worse. So you basically you become a lesser and an inferior version of yourself when you're sleep deprived and when you're sick. And the worst thing is you don't notice it, you don't think about it, you're just walking and living in this lesser version of yourself, and you don't even think about why that could be. You don't even have the introspection to think, maybe I should be a bit more energetic today. Maybe I should get more things done today. So that's a real danger. So that is one of the reasons sleep is so important, because you see all of these self-improvement guys like Jocko Willing, for example. He says, I get sleep. I get 5.5 to 6 hours of sleep every night. So I'm fine. And while that could be useful for mental toughness, you could do that once or twice, but I wouldn't recommend doing that on a consistent basis, because sleep affects so many areas of your life. Basically, anything that you want to get good at, sleep is the key. So if you want to get stronger, sleep is the key. Because when you work out in a gym, the neuromuscular connections, so the connections between your brain and your muscles, they strengthen as a result of your training. But they don't do that while you're training. They do that when you're sleeping. So, and even if you train for hypertrophy purely, then it's still gonna have the same effect. So when your muscles are, so if you didn't know this, you basically tear your muscles apart. You get micro strains, it's called, when you work out. And then when you sleep, especially when you sleep, maybe during the day too, but especially when you sleep, because then everything else is shut off, and then your body can focus on that. So then when you sleep, it gets rebuilt, and it gets rebuilt stronger, and then your muscles grow. And sleep is especially important for everything that has to do with your brain, everything intellectual. And that includes, by the way, muscle memory. So there was this really interesting experience that I had. So I picked up boxing maybe 1 year ago, and because I really loved boxing, and I had a lot of anger stored inside of me, which I still have, by the way. But so one of the things that boxers do, which is like an OG exercise, is jump rope. So you have to, if you want to call yourself a boxer, then you have to jump rope. And it's just sort of a rule. I don't think it's technically necessary. Maybe it transfers to real boxing somewhat, but I would guess that the cardio that you get from that, the coordination, the hand foot coordination, the rhythm, etc., you could get that from sparring. But still, it's sort of this culture in boxing that you have to be able to jump rope, at least to a certain degree. So, and I became obsessed with it, and I wanted to do all kinds of things. But so the first day I jumped rope for probably 2 hours. So it was a long time, and I wanted to do all these tricks and double unders, and so I could already jump rope like a bit, but I wanted to do some skippings, some crossovers, some double unders, and so on. And it just went so bad. I couldn't do any of them, and it didn't seem during those 2 hours that I learned anything. I didn't experience anything like that. I just felt like I was getting worse the more I did it. But then the next day, when I had slept on it, and then I went back to the jump rope, I could do all of those moves so easily, and it was just incredible, because you shouldn't be able to learn doing crossovers and double unders, and I think it's called skipping, is when you I can't describe it right now, but if you see Mike Tyson, he does that. It's like when you jump with one leg like this 2 times and the other leg like this 2 times, and you do this sort of skipping motion. And you shouldn't be able to learn, at least in my mind, you shouldn't be able to learn all of those things in one day, which I didn't learn it in one day, but I did apparently learn them in one night, because that's when I think the learning happened, when I slept. So I went back the next day and I could do them without much effort, and I was just amazed, how could this happen? And I came to the conclusion that it was sleep, and I really believe that it was, and I have no doubt that it was that, because as I understand it, based on for example, Matthew Walker's podcast with Joe Rogan's podcast with Matthew Walker. By the way, he's got a book, Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker, so you can look that up, Why We Sleep. And it's basically that, so imagine the simplest example. So imagine you wanna throw a basketball in the basket, and you do that one day for, let's say you do that 500 times, and some of them are successful and some are not. Every time it's not successful, you get a little pain, and every time it is successful, you get a little pleasure, so dopamine. And then you get hundreds of repetitions of that, so you get any sort of movement, and then it's connected to a certain experience. So when you sleep, your brain associates a certain movement, which is the movement that you did when you made it to the net, when you scored, with pleasure or with something good. And everything else, when you fail, it associates with something negative. And then it strengthens the neurons and the connections, the mind-muscle connections that made you throw that ball that went into the net. But so it's basically that your brain records everything that you do, and then during your sleep it analyzes it, and it says, okay, this pattern of movements led to this bad outcome, and then get rid of that. And this sequence of movements, or this hand placement, or this, force led to a good thing, led to dopamine in brain terms. So let's strengthen that connection. So those connections that made you do that, let's strengthen those, and then you'll do that automatically the next day. And obviously you're not going to do it perfectly in one day, but you still get the point. So sleep helps in that way. So, and this is also one advice that I could give you. If you're doing something like that very repetitive, if you're trying to prick the crossbar when you're playing football, or if you're trying to hit the ball in a basket, or any kind of sports like that, and you can't already play an instrument, let's say, and you don't seem to learn, you do for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'm not getting better at this. Don't worry, keep doing it, because all of those repetitions are going to be analyzed when you sleep. So that is what sleep does, and that is why just get those repetitions in, and then your brain does everything for you when you sleep. But you need to make sure you get good sleep, and don't believe any of the stuff that you've heard, any of the myths. Even the Bible talks about, so this must be an age-old sort of narrative that sleep is bad, that too much sleep is that you're lazy. But it can't be, because like LeBron James, he says that he sleeps I think 12 hours a night or a day. And Eliud Kipchoge, the former marathon world record holder, he says that he sleeps something like 12 hours as well. So it's obviously not because they're lazy, they're top athletes. It's because they know what sleep can do for you. But even since thousands of years ago, we've had this notion that sleep and wanting to sleep too much equals laziness. Because there is a verse in the Bible that says he who loves the folding of hands like this and to sleep, poverty will set upon you like a thief in the night, or something like that. And I really think that we have to get rid of this notion that sleep is bad for it, unless you're doing it just because unless you're laying in bed and not sleeping, or unless you haven't deserved the sleep. If you're not training, if you're not doing anything intellectual, if you're not, like, your body needs sleep to analyze everything that you've done during the day. But if you haven't done anything during the day, then you don't deserve the sleep. So train a lot and do a lot of intellectual work and then sleep. And then those two combined will make you into the person you want to be. And sleep affects so many things. You couldn't imagine if something, I would even say, like, if something's going wrong for you, just have a little longer sleep and a little better sleep, and have consistent sleep schedules. And if the problem doesn't go away, then you can do something else, but chances are it will go away. So sleep is so important. And if you listen to the full episode from the Joe Rogan podcast with Matthew Walker, he will explain everything. So even if you just get bad sleep one day, he said something like, when you change from summertime to wintertime, and you lose 1 hour of sleep, or maybe it's the other way, I don't know, but when you lose 1 hour of sleep, then the rate of, I think, cardiac arrest or something like that increased by a big percentage. And that's just from one day, that's just the next day. So just losing 1 hour of sleep can have devastating effects. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out, I'm not saying you shouldn't, do fun stuff, but try to keep it as consistent as possible. That's what my experience has taught me.